Welcome to Beyond the Good Girl podcast. I'm Gillian Ray, and for the next few weeks on the podcast, I'm sharing my story about when good stopped working for me. In 2020, in the height of the pandemic, I found myself back living in my parents' house with a cancer diagnosis, having had to quit my job in Warsaw, having recently just managed to get an emergency flight out of Mongolia, and I noticed this character, the good girl, the one that always tries to fix everything, the one that's a perfectionist, the one that, you know, bypasses what's really going on in your body and goes straight to the head, straight to the fix it answers, straight to trying to manage expectations, manage perceptions, all of that. And well, good stopped working because cancer kind of forces you back into your body. So, this is the story of meeting that part of me up close and personal and starting to move beyond her. This episode is called I Absolutely Know I'm Going to Die, and other predictions that haven't come true yet. So, the day the fear came for me, I'd honestly never known anything like it. It didn't come when I was sat in the gynecologist office in Warsaw, although I was scared for sure then, definitely. It didn't happen when I was waiting for my MRI in the hospital here in Hertfordshire, although I was actually weeping and shaking and I couldn't control my breath and I was so terrified. But that really wasn't the fear. The fear actually came for me on a fairly ordinary January day in the familiar room with the yellow bedspread at my parents' house. And it came first as a thought, I'm going to die. And then it ran into every single nerve ending in my body. And somehow it kind of lodged itself as a knowing. So my mouth had gone dry, my heart was racing, and I knew I wanted to run, but my body just, it literally felt like ice. I was scared through the whole of my treatment, but this day there was something different about it. And because there were no like calming thoughts in my mind, that it didn't offer like some alternative scenario like it had done in other cases where there's even the fake funeral and Yvonne McAvoy and her in her veil and all of that kind of stuff that had happened before, the little storytelling. None of that was there. There was nothing, no story, just the sound of like my own heartbeat and the knowing, just the knowing. There was not even words to it. I don't even know if saying that the words came, I'm going to die, is even true. It was just like this. It was a knowing that was what was going to happen. It probably lasted like 30 seconds before my mum like called me and said, "Hey, I've just been to the bakery. Do you want a donut?" And I kind of popped it out and dried my eyes and sat there and drinking a cup of tea and chatting to my mum about her latest trip to the chemist, which was always fraught and deserved to be having donuts bought to reward ourselves for having done that. Yeah, so but before that, even though it was only 30 seconds, it was like time stood still. I can still remember it very viscerally, what it felt like to have that feeling. So later, when I'd calmed down and had a chat with my mum and a cup of tea and eaten more donuts than I really needed to, I remembered the feeling. But now the story machine was back, so it was starting to tell a story. And that feeling that I'd had, whatever it was, the icy cold feeling, the heart beating really loud in my own ears, all of that feeling, there was a story attached to it now. And the story that I had attached to it was that the cancer had spread and I was doomed. I was so sure of this, so sure. I decided that the only logical thing to do was just to embrace it, to surrender fully to what must be. Now, luckily, I have an expert in excellence on the staff in my brain, the overachieving, overzealous good girl. So she had decided that we will have the best death ever. And she is like, we'll prepare for it. We'll not be caught out. We'll make lists. We'll make sure everything's sorted. Um, we are not going to be caught with our pants down if death comes knocking. And very quickly, having run through all the practicalities, I decided my children were actually old enough that they would be fine. They would miss me if I died, but, not so young that they needed a plan. My husband and his family and my mum and her family, like, there were plenty of people around for them. They didn't need me. I'd already decided this. I'd put it aside. I'd be like, no, the only thing is here is, I'm a bit sad that I won't get to see them grow up. But let's be logical about this, Gillian, because yes, you're not going to see them growing up, but you're not going to know because you're going to be dead. So don't worry about that. They're going to be fine. Everything's good. And then I thought, right, well, maybe my youngest daughter, maybe I should just have a little word with someone to make sure that there's someone to look after her, because she is actually only 15. So maybe I should go and speak to my brother's wife or something, make sure that she looks out for her in case she ever needs a woman in her life. So that was me. I dispensed with the practicalities, shed that little tear that, that I wouldn't see them grow up, and then just pop that to the one side. Not going to worry about that anymore. So then I said to myself in that really logical way that maybe someone who spent too much time reading The Power of Now would, well, there is only this present moment. You can only know what you're knowing now. What do you know right now? There is no future. There is no past. Everything's fine. You're fine. It was like I was trying to convince myself of this. And how I convinced myself with this was like, well, you're not sad when you fall asleep. You fall asleep. Okay, maybe you wish the night would go on a bit longer, but you fall asleep and you wake up the next day. And if you didn't wake up the next day, you wouldn't know anything of it. You'll be fine. And so then I started to do this practice where every night I would go to bed and I would fall asleep, and I would try to catch that moment of sleep where you fall asleep, to say, this is it, this is the moment. And because I could never catch it, I would be like, well, maybe that's what dying will be like, that you might be anticipating it, you might be waiting for it, but you can actually never catch it. And so I kind of nightly was kind of almost trying to prepare myself logically for what might happen if I died. The other thing that I did as well was I was like, right, there are loads of monks and traditions. I've traveled a lot around the world. I've always been interested in different philosophies and religions. And I was like, there are a lot of traditions that actually prepare for death. And I was actually thinking about, monks that set themselves on fire during, protests and stuff. And they just sat there and they disappeared, and they were, even though the flames were burning them up, they were somewhere else already. And I was like, yeah, I need to get more spiritual. I need to get back into my spirituality. I'm going to start preparing for death by meditating on dying. And so I imagined my body and saw it return to the dust in the earth. Not in a literal decomposition way, just sort of like actually just sort of like dust. And it kind of, in my mind, it was kind of looking like fairy dust. I was like, I was just disintegrating into dust, and it was going back into the earth. And so I started that kind of practice, just because this was me. I'm like, logically speaking, I've got to prepare. I've got to be ready. And the thing is I kind of became all consumed with this idea about death. I kind of became like, that was really all I wanted to talk about. And so, and not just death in general, but my death in specifics, which I'm now realizing was rather inconsiderate to my poor mother. Bearing in mind that I'm her eldest and only daughter. There she was, watching me go through this, and I just want to talk about how I'm absolutely convinced that I'm going to die. And not only that, my dad was actually dying. I mean, he was actually dying at that time. And here I am talking about myself. I mean, could you be more inconsiderate? I could see it now. But I was obsessed. It was consuming my thoughts. It was all I could really think about. It's no wonder that she kept shushing me and going, oh, Gillian, don't talk about that. We don't know. You don't talk about that. However, I did meet regularly with my brother, and we would go for walks, and he'd bring his lovely, gorgeous dog, Ruby, and we'd take these massive long walks together. Obviously, for any government officials listening, we actually only walked for 1 hour, and we were X amount of meters apart. Yeah, I wasn't that good that I was following those rules exactly. So we walked regularly, and this one day we were walking among the trees, and then we sat down on this bench, and we were talking about my dad or our dad. Talked about dogs having a sixth sense and about morphic resonance and all the kind of things that I love to talk about. And I told David, I said to him, I am absolutely sure I'm going to die. And, we talked for a minute, and he didn't shush me. He listened. And I obviously felt the need to emphasize this. And so I remember saying it again. I just know I'm going to die. I can feel it in my bones. And then I said to him, it's okay, by the way, I'm ready for it. I'm prepared. I'm mentally prepared for it. I know that this is what's going to happen, and I'm all right. I'm okay. And he said to me, can I ask you something? I said, sure. This feeling that you're absolutely sure you're going to die. I went, uh-huh. He said, when was the last time you felt that? And when was it right? And as my mouth scrambled to find words to answer this, I just looked at him and burst out laughing. And I was like, oh yeah, good catch. So I'm telling this story because I was absolutely sure I was going to die, but I was wrong. And also, there wasn't anything really wrong in what the good girl plan was, the logical plan. Make sure everything's okay for your children. We should all do that. We should all make sure everything's okay for our children. Be prepared for death. Yeah, do you know what? We don't talk enough about death and what it means, and we don't experience it enough. And actually, it's not too wrong to meditate on death. But like a lot of things, this had become an obsession for me, and it was all in my head. I wasn't really experiencing it bodily. I was ignoring everything that was going on in my body and just trying to find a logical way out. When my brother just looked at me and said that to me, it just broke through, and I was just like, oh yeah, how could I possibly know? And yeah, so I'm sharing this story because, as I say, I have these mixed feelings because there's absolutely nothing wrong in being logical and prepared. And as I say, all of those things are really important. But I just totally was bypassing the actual feelings. I was going straight to logic. I was going straight to answers. I was going straight to practicalities. I was going straight to how can I fix this? What can I do about this? Instead of just sitting with it. And sometimes we do need to sit in grief a little while. And I can laugh at myself now. I can look back at it and I can see it, and I can see how utterly ridiculous I was, and also how horribly inconsiderate I was as well. Because I'd become so obsessed with this, and this is a problem that can be solved. And this is kind of what happens with me very often, is my mind will latch onto a problem, and it will just run it over and over and over in a loop, thinking, how can it fix it? And it will come up with all of these different solutions, and it will try them all. And actually, I didn't even examine the feeling for its honesty. I didn't sit with the feeling of, okay, even if this is true, what does that really mean for me? I immediately bypassed the grief that I felt that I would be leaving my children. I was like, no, yes, that is horrible, but but nothing can be done about it, and straight back on. And for quite a lot of the first part of my chemotherapy journey, my cancer journey, that's what I was doing. I was just head down, getting on with it. What needs to be done? What needs to be done? And it took actually a long time afterwards for me to start to process a lot of the grief that had happened during that time. Even to the point that, I was like, well, of course I'm losing my hair. Everyone loses their hair. I didn't grieve for anything. I was just like, this is it. This is what is going on. But it was still there. I wasn't actually getting away from it. I was just pretending really performing to no one but myself. And that's, I talk a bit about in my programs and stuff about how the good girl is a performance, but she's sometimes performing to an audience of one. She's performing to me. So a lot of what I do now with the myth and the poetry is about actually allowing the feelings. It's actually about giving yourself permission to feel horrible, scary, nasty things without immediately looking for a solution, without immediately going to, well, it's okay because. And that's a work in progress, and I think it always will be. And so, yeah, that's why I write the newsletter as well, the Beyond the Good Girl newsletter, because she's still showing up. She's still the part of me that likes to do things, that likes to reach for solutions instead of just being, instead of just enjoying the moment. Like, I mean, only that good girl could take a book like The Power of Now and apply it so logically rather than actually apply it spiritually. And so now I'm trying to be more in stillness. And that's actually the next archetype I'm working with in my membership, the Speakeasy. We meet twice a month in Zoom on a Friday morning, and we look at different archetypes. So who could we be beyond the good girl? And we look at lots of different archetypes. And we're going to be looking at the sage, who I'm kind of interpreting as bodily wisdom and stillness and the wisdom of the quiet spaces. So if you're interested in that, do ping me a DM and I'll send that to you. But all the kind of information about what's going on in my world, you will find in my newsletter, which you can sign up for on beyondthegoodgirlpodcast.com. For now, I will leave you with that. And next week, I'm going to tell the story of when I actually found the breast lump in an episode entitled, "What kind of doctor do you need for a breast lump?" and other things I Googled in Warsaw. Until then, see you next time.